Welcome back to Morning Joe. Joining us now, Vice Chairman of the Select Committee on Intelligence, Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. Senator Warner, good morning. It's good to see you. You are a businessman. You've been successful in your private life. And just want to ask you about how you're dealing with Virginians who are concerned about their businesses, small businesses in particular. We've got, $3 trillion over the course of 4 bills poured into the system of stimulus, some of that into the Paycheck Protection Program. House Democrats now looking for $3 trillion more dollars. How are the small businesses in your state who've not gotten their money, who are worried about their survival, going to deal with the next couple of weeks and months as the economy continues to be shut down?
Well, I think you're seeing enormous uncertainty with this absolutely devastating economic loss. 33 million Americans losing their jobs, unemployment levels, I'm sure, above 20% at this point, and some level of confusion. You hear about these numbers, $2.7 trillion that we've appropriated, another $4 trillion in Federal Reserve lending, and most responses is, that's great, but where's my money? Where's my check? And well, I think the PPP program was well-intentioned. I think there were design flaws. I think there was a problem from companies that were too big receiving money, public companies, and also companies that had no demonstration of revenue loss. So what I've proposed, and I've got folks like Bernie Sanders, who has been supportive of this idea, and on the right, Josh Hawley, the Republican senator from Missouri, has a very similar plan that says before we simply refill up the bucket of PPP or unemployment or others, maybe we should take a pause and do what the Europeans have done and do direct paycheck support. I have a program called the Paycheck Security Act. It would pay up to 90% of, up to 100% of each salary of the $90,000 from small businesses to medium to large. We'd make sure we'd only go to businesses who've actually had revenue loss. Very biggest businesses would not qualify. We think this approach, which reconnects the worker to the employer, would, one, give us a quicker startup when we do reopen, and 2, would make sure that those 27 million Americans who lost their health insurance as well as losing their jobs would be reconnected and keep that health insurance. So I know this would be a major transition of all these programs to something that I think would be simpler and actually cheaper all in. But my hope is we'll be introducing it next week, and I think you're going to see support across the political spectrum, because it might give, to answer your question directly, it might give that small business owner some certainty that their payrolls were going to be protected. And candidly, what it would also do is, we got one area that we've not talked a lot about are mid-level businesses. Those businesses, 500 to a few thousand, not big enough to get to the public markets, too big to qualify for PPP. They've gotten nothing so far.
Yeah, this public fight we've seen at the top of the federal government between Dr. Fauci, who testified that he's worried about going back too soon in terms of reopening businesses and going back to school, and Donald Trump, the president, rebutting him yesterday and saying he disagreed with that view of things. That obviously comes down to the ground level in places like Richmond and towns all over the state of Virginia. So what do you say? Where do you come down on that debate when a small business owner comes to you and says, I understand the public health risks, but the alternative here is my business closes, everybody I employ loses their jobs, and I don't have food on the table in my house? What do you say to those business owners who are desperate right now?
I say that is a very real problem that is playing out right now. And what I wish we'd have is less sniping at the top and more data in terms of not only rate of infection. We get data, pretty good data on hospitalizations. We don't have it year-over-year comparisons. But I think all of us would agree, and I say this who wants to reopen the economy responsibly, we need more testing. And one of the things I've urged the administration, begged the vice president, is why can't we create a master database that has, by jurisdiction, the amount of testing capacity, what type of tests, whether they are swab tests or whether they are the blood tests that measure your antibodies. Why can't we figure out what is in the FDA pipeline of being approved? If we had that kind of transparency around testing, remember, every testing component has to have some level of FDA approval. So we have that knowledge. It's knowable. That would be helpful to policymakers. It would be helpful to that small business person if she thought, my gosh, well, we might be able to triple testing next week because we knew something new is coming online. The administration has refused to do that. I've started working with Johns Hopkins University, who got a great brand name. They've already created the definitive site for the growth of the virus. My hope is they'll create the definitive site on testing. That would be very, very helpful in terms of reopening the economy.
It's still amazing that states and municipalities are having to hustle on the side to figure out their own testing because there's no program. Senator Mike Barnichel's here with a question for you. Mike?
Sure. Senator, are you surprised that in the United States of America today we are so inadequate in terms of combating what we're combating, the virus at so many different levels? We seem to be just inadequate. Does that surprise you in this country, in this day and age?
Mike, it shocks me. It shocks me when we look at the fact that, the United States has got roughly, I think 3 to 4% of the world's population, yet we've got a third of the cases worldwide. It shocks me that in this kind of international crisis, what normally would happen, and we think about the 2008 fiscal crisis, 9/11, or even earlier outbreaks like Ebola, it's always been America that's been coordinating the world's response. For the most part, we seem totally absent from that leadership role, and it's been, I believe, a national embarrassment where the administration has failed to use the powers that Congress gave them, this president who likes power, to take control of the distribution and supply of PPE, the failure to take control and distribution of our testing capability. And we're seeing the kind of a most dog-eat-dog kind of competition between hospitals and states. It's obscene, both driving up the cost of PPE and not getting the testing out to the right folks. And unless we see a better command and control position take place, when we get to a vaccination, we could have exactly the same crisis. If we're not right now acquiring domestic supply chain on things like glass vials and other tools that will be necessary when we get a vaccination to distribute that fairly across the country, shame on all of us.
So in this crisis, we are receiving an inordinate amount of daily mixed messages from the White House as compared to from like Dr. Gottlieb, who we just had on the air, who's highly credible. In one of the mixed messages, they seem to be trying, the White House seems to be trying, the president seems to be desperately trying to blame this virus on a perhaps planned virus out of China, out of Wuhan, out of a laboratory. Have you seen any evidence, you're on the Intelligence Committee, have you seen any evidence of where this vaccine came from? Did it come from a laboratory intentionally in Wuhan?
Like, we have constantly pressed the intelligence community. We started hearing in January about this. Candidly, most of the intelligence at that point was not that much different than what was appearing in the open press and open sources. But clearly the vaccine, the virus originated from China, and China has been very opaque about letting other international scientists in, but we have pulsed the IC regularly to try to get those answers. Is there anything else there that's not appearing in the intelligence that we read? Matter of fact, Chairman Burr and I wrote a letter to all the leaders of the intelligence community when we heard the President of the United States in one of his press conferences make statements and alluding to the fact that he has some level of intelligence that would indicate that it may have originated from a lab or may have escaped from a lab. We then heard the Secretary of State make similar comments. And as a member of the so-called Gang of Eight, the group that's supposed to have privy to even the most top secret information, I've not seen any evidence of that. And Chairman Burr and I, in a bipartisan way, have made that request, and we're waiting to get a response from the intel community.
All right, Senator Mark Warner, thank you very much. Thank you for coming on this morning. The Labor Department just released the latest numbers on jobless claims. Nearly 3 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week. That brings the total number of requests since the pandemic to about 36.5 million claims. Up next, we'll talk more about that. We have an important conversation as well that's a few centuries in the making. Keep it right here on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.